How's it going, super friends? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Brad, the DC Universe Geek. For those of you who don't know, today I want to talk about the 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman movie. Do we still believe that a man can fly after watching this movie, or does it fall flat on its face? I just want to preface this whole video by letting you know the reason why I'm making this video now is because I just had the chance to watch it as of yesterday on the big screen. So to start with, the original Superman movie had an excellent cast. Christopher Reeve as Superman, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, Marlon Brando as Jor-El, Ned Beatty as Otis, Valerie Perrine as Mrs. Tessmacher, and the cast just goes on and on and on. It really was an excellent cast that was in this movie. Not to mention we get to see what Cliff Clavin used to do before he used to hang out at Cheers all the time. That's John Ratzenberger, a classic. As far as I'm concerned, it was a near perfect casting for the day. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the movie. First, we'll start with the story. Does it still hold water? Well, it's broken down beautifully into 3 acts. Act 1 is what I call the Krypton Act, which ends off with Baby Cal being rocketed away from the doomed planet. Act 2 is what I like to call the Smallville Act. The beginning of that act is where he's discovered by the Kents, and it ends off after the death of Jonathan, with him going off to the Fortress of Solitude, and him spending 12 years with his father, learning everything, the complete wealth of Kryptonian knowledge about the universe, the galaxy, and everything that they have to know. Act 3 is what I call the Metropolis Act, where Superman goes to Metropolis with his newly created Clark Kent guys. Not that he wasn't Clark Kent in Act 2, but he certainly has to make up a more clumsier character of himself to juxtaposition against who he really is in the Superman guys. Strong, confident, bold. He has to come up with a character that people would never suspect that they are the two one and the same. So act number 3, the Metropolis Act, is where he becomes Superman, establishes himself as a hero. He's named Superman by Lois in that act. You meet the antagonist, which is Lex Luthor, along with Otis and Miss Tessmacher, and that's where all the real action of the story happens. They weren't concerned with pushing the story along. They really took their time between Act 1, 2, and 3 to craft a story that would be something that you actually wanted to follow along with. You would actually care about Superman as a being, and not just some guy that stands around with his hands on his hips being super all the time. Nowadays, it seems like scenes are cut out of movies just for runtime's sake, and it seems like sometimes movies can be forced along too fast and the plot doesn't have enough time to really develop. And I didn't see that in the Superman movie. I saw a really well thought out, well planned movie that was executed in all 3 acts. The next question is one of special effects. Do we still believe a man can fly after watching this movie, even though it's like 40 years old and the effects style is so outdated? It was cutting edge for 1978. And I gotta tell you, watching it in the theaters, yes, there were times when I was like, it definitely looks, you know he's in front of a green screen, but they did such an excellent job of lighting him against the background that I was never yanked out. I was never unable to suspend disbelief, as in really terrible green screen effects. Watching Christopher Reeve take off into flight from the ground, sure, at times it looked a little bit janky, like it was very obvious that he was just on wires at that point, but for 1978, again, this was top of the line, and it didn't yank me out of the movie too much. But heck, I would rather watch Christopher Reeve on wires in front of a green screen any day compared to some of the Brandon Roth completely CGI'd flying scenes. I'll take Christopher Reeve on a flying harness any day. As for Christopher Reeve himself, watching this movie on the big screen really reminded me why Christopher Reeve is my Superman. For one, he didn't just play Superman, he played 2 characters, 2 completely different characters. He played Superman and he played Clark Kent. And the way that he juxtapositioned these characters against each other, Superman being strong, bold, upright, confident, truthful, and then you have Clark Kent, who is still truthful and good, but he's also clumsy and hunched over and unsure of himself. The juxtaposition between these 2 characters of being almost seemingly small and inconsequential and outdated with his language, saying things like golly, compared to Superman, he wears that cape and he almost is like royalty. He is Superman when he puts on that suit. He did an amazing job, and as far as I'm concerned, he has done the best job of actually capturing that bright, hopeful, good Superman of light in comparison to any other actor that's ever put the suit on. And not to mention, I just prefer his facial features compared to any other actor that's played Superman. I think that for me, he just looks like the quintessential Superman. And also the suit. I'm just happy to see that classic suit being worn on the big screen. And let's be honest here. We all know that Henry Cavill fills out his Superman suit something special. The guy hit the gym big time, and he got bigger for Dawn of Justice. He was even bigger for Dawn of Justice. Well, Christopher Reeve didn't exactly not fill the suit out either. The standards of what makes a muscly superhero were different back then. They're definitely more chiseled now than they were back then. But Christopher Reeve, that suit wasn't baggy on him either. I mean, you can see the guy has some serious pecs, some abs. He really was a large guy. When you see him standing next to other people, you really realize how big Christopher Reeve really was. The next question is one of powers. Did Richard Donner and company understand Superman's powers and utilize them in a way that makes sense? I think that for the most part they did. They left out some powers, you know, heat vision, super breath, freeze breath, I believe on purpose until he faced off against Zod and company. But the invulnerability, the super strength, the flight, the speed, and the hearing and the vision, I thought they did a good job of using them in a not cheesy way in this movie. There are times when you can definitely tell that they pulled back the strength of his powers, you know, the speed, because he had a harder time catching up to both missiles, when I think in reality, if you know the comics, he would have been able to catch both of those missiles and flick them off into space pretty darn easily. And we know that he can go that fast, that kind of Superman level fast, because he flies around the Earth a bazillion times, pretty much 1 to 2 times per second once he gets going, to turn the Earth around, to reverse time, to save Lois. So we know that he has incredible speed. But I get it, for the sake of suspense, they had to pull back that speed and strength a little bit to, you know, there's gotta be some suspense. Will he do it? And the missiles, he didn't have a fisticuffs punch out with anybody in this movie. Lex Luthor was the villain. And so they had to find some other way to challenge him, which meant dulling his powers down just a little bit. And some people might say, well, no, he's flying slower because he's in Earth's atmosphere. No, we know that he can fly much, much faster than those missiles in Earth's atmosphere. It was all about the suspense and creating the drama in that third act. He had to not be able to catch both missiles so that Lois would die, and then he would do what is forbidden and interfere with human history and reverse time so that he could save Lois. That's why they did it. And also, it really is evident that they toned down his strength as well, because when he's trying to push that missile up, he is really pushing, he's really working at it. And yet at the same time, you see him underground at super speed lifting all the fault lines back up again. That would be way heavier, way harder than shoving a missile off into outer space. So it really is all for the sake of the story. Oh, look at me, I'm a broken record. Broken record. Broken record. Now, are there things that are kind of cheesy, maybe don't add up about this movie over the years? Things that, you know, you're like, that you could never do that now? Of course there are. When Lex Luthor's trying to secure that missile so that he can change the codes, and Miss Tessbacher is conveniently scanty clad on the side of the road near a crashed car, and that general with all his soldiers show up, and he needs to give her chest massages and then mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and they all form a circle around him and stand at attention while he's doing who knows what creepy stuff behind all their backs. Yeah, you could never do that now. You could never do that now in a superhero movie. It just would never happen. And the whole idea of Superman flying around the Earth to reverse time and then flying around it again to make time go forward again, that is the most ridiculous idea I have ever heard. That is even more ridiculous than Superman grabbing his S-shield and chucking it at some guy in the face.
Prepare to be destroyed, Superman. What was that? Yeah, take that, you jerk.
But it's a beautiful story nonetheless, and you suspend disbelief so that the story can be told. So I guess my final review to answer the question of, does this movie stand the test of time? Do you still believe a man can fly when you watch it? I know myself, I did. It's wonderfully casted. I mean, Marlon Brando as Jor-El. Need I say more? Wonderfully casted. It was acted fantastically. It was scripted very, very well. It looks fantastic. The special effects for the day still look pretty darn good. I can't think of a reason why you would not want to watch this movie if you were a Superman fan. Let's say you're younger and you're watching this video and you've only grown up with the Henry Cavill version of Superman and you haven't seen any of the Christopher Reeve stuff. Seriously, do yourself a favor, go back and watch 1 and 2 for sure, at least, and then 3, and if you're brave enough, watch 4. 4 gets reviewed pretty horribly. I happen to enjoy all of them. Some I can definitely tell are better than others, but do yourself a favor, go watch all 4 of those movies because they're a piece of cinematic history, superhero history, and DC Comics movie history. And I feel like if you don't go and see these movies, you're missing something that was quite special. But that's it, that's my review, so thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. Leave any comments you have down in the comment section below. You know what the big red button's for, you can click it if you'd like to. You can ding the bell to get notified of new videos when they come out. And I will see you with the next one. Have an awesome day, super friends. Take care.